You mentioned the SAP that the administration put out on February 6th, but it's not a broad statement about DC statehood. It specifically says that the administration opposes the resolution that would dismantle the crime bill. So when was this policy reversed, and why weren't House Democrats notified about the reversal?
So I'll say this. There was never a change of heart on where we were with the SAP. The SAP, the way that it's laid out, speaks to the president supporting DC statehood. That is where we were. That's what we were at the time. Wanted to make sure that we again lifted up where the president has been for the past decades, making sure that DC, fighting for DC to become a state. And we actually say in the SAP that if Congress wants to move forward in that way, we should pass H.R. 51, make D.C. the 51 state. And so we never laid out where the president was going to go once it came to his desk, because we wanted to allow Congress to move forward in the way that they normally do with the mechanism when a piece of legislation moves forward. And so we never said anything at this time. Now we're communicating very clearly. Now that we know that this legislation is going to be in the president's at the president's desk, we're making very clear and communicating that where the president is on this legislation.
But wait, I'm sorry. It specifically says the word opposes. So is it that the administration wasn't aware of the content, the specifics of the crime bill, and now you are aware, and the president says he doesn't support some of the changes that the DC Council put forward? Because when you released the SAP, I'm assuming, maybe incorrectly, that you were very aware of what the council was proposing.
We were aware of what the council were proposing. What we're saying was that we wanted to make sure that we continued the president's continued push for statehood, and that's what we did. That's what we did in the SAP, and that was what was the most important thing that we believed. There was no veto threat in the SAP. There really wasn't. It may have been. I just read it while you were asking me. We opposed it, but there was no veto threat. So I want to be really clear about it. It stated our support for DC statehood, but it did not indicate what the president would do should the bill come to his desk. It did not say that. It did not lay that out. Now we're communicating that very clearly. We communicated with the House Democrats days ago when they were in Baltimore, and again, I said this to MJ. I remember many of you asking where we were going to go, and I said we don't have a decision yet. We don't have anything to share on this, on where the president's going to be with this particular bill, and now we are, because we know that it's going to come to his desk.
There must be some state laws that the president also disagrees with that have to do with crime, and he obviously doesn't have the power to do anything about that. I'm trying to square his decision to use his power to do something in DC while he's also saying, the federal government, should allow them to be their own state.
Because DC is not a state.
So
this bill,
and therefore he should.
DC is not a state, so therefore the bill is coming to his desk, so he has to make a decision. It's as simple as that, Weija, right? Because DC is not a state. Now, he wants DC to become a state. We've been very clear about that. He has said that for decades, that he believes in DC statehood, but it's not. And so therefore, because DC is not a state, when bills like this occur, it goes to the president, and he has to make a decision. And that's where we are. It's as simple as that. Now, if DC becomes a state, yes, the president believes that it should be governing, cities should be governing on its own. That's what he believes.
But until then, they shouldn't.
But Weija, DC is not a state.
Right, but he has to be, I'm asking because he does have an option to veto. That is one action he could take.
But again, this is a president that believes in keeping communities safe. He believes in keeping the 700,000 residents in DC safe. And so he's taking that action because it's coming to him. We didn't put this legislation to get forth. This is not our legislation. This is a legislation that is coming before the President of the United States because DC is not a state. It's just not. So he has to make a decision. So he's going to make a decision that will help the residents of DC, that will deliver for the residents of DC. And it's as simple as that.
Thank
Okay.
you.